Welcome to Life Stories, where we share inspiring tales of resilience, love, and personal transformation. In today's story, we meet Emily, a successful real estate agent whose seemingly perfect life took an unexpected turn. Betrayed by the very people she trusted most, Emily faced unimaginable challenges, including losing her home and the support of her husband during a vulnerable time. Yet, through determination and inner strength, she fought back to reclaim her life and independence. Join us as we dive into this powerful journey of courage and self-discovery. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Life Stories to start today's story. My name is Emily, and for most of my life, I believed in hard work, independence, and love. These principles guided me through every challenge and triumph. By the time I turned 33, I had built a successful career as a real estate agent in suburban Dallas, earning enough to purchase the home of my dreams, a $25 million masterpiece that symbolized all my hard work and ambition. Life felt complete when I married Brian, a charming tech consultant, 3 years my senior. Our wedding was a picture of happiness, and I thought I was stepping into a future filled with love and mutual respect. Little did I know, that day would mark the beginning of a storm I never saw coming. At first, everything seemed idyllic. Brian and I moved into my home, and for a while, life was everything I hoped it would be. But soon, cracks began to show. Brian started to grow distant, his warmth fading into a chilling aloofness I couldn't ignore. Then came Carol, his mother, a retired schoolteacher with a commanding presence and an endless list of opinions. She began visiting unannounced, finding fault with everything in the house, from the curtains to the furniture. Nothing seemed to meet her approval. "Emily, my dear," she would say, her voice dripping with condescension. "These curtains clash with the sofa. Have you considered changing them?" I wanted to defend myself, to push back against her constant criticism, but I held my tongue. I told myself it was just family dynamics, something I needed to accept for the sake of peace. But Carol's presence in our lives grew larger and more suffocating. Her casual disapproval started to erode my confidence, leaving me questioning my choices, my taste, and even my worth as a wife. One evening, after another of Carol's unsolicited visits, I finally approached Brian. "I love our home," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "But your mom's comments are really bothering me. Can we set some boundaries?" Brian sighed and looked away, his voice dismissive. "She's just trying to help, Emily. That's what family does. You know how moms can be." His indifference stung. Was I asking too much for him to stand by me? The disappointment was sharp and bitter. But I chose to stay quiet, clinging to the hope that things would improve. Then, everything changed one night. I came home from a long day at work to find Carol standing in the living room, surrounded by suitcases. "I've decided to move in," she announced, her tone implying this was the most natural thing in the world. I froze, disbelief coursing through me. "This is my home," I managed to say, my voice trembling. "We never discussed this." Carol's response was calm but cutting. "Emily, family is important. You knew that when you married Brian. You can't expect him to live without his mother, can you?" I turned to Brian, desperate for his support. "Brian, please say something. This isn't right." He looked conflicted, glancing between his mother and me. "Mom just wants to help. Emily, we can make this work." A wave of betrayal washed over me, colder and sharper than anything I had ever felt. My husband, my partner, was choosing his mother over me, turning our home into a battleground. I felt utterly alone. Weeks passed, and things only worsened. Carol's presence became unbearable, her subtle jabs and controlling nature a constant reminder that I no longer had a voice in my own home. When I discovered I was pregnant, I thought the news might bring Brian and me closer. I hoped it would soften Carol's demeanor, but her reaction was indifferent at best. You'll need to watch your diet, she said flatly. We don't want any health issues. Her cold words shattered what little hope I had left. I began to feel like a stranger in the life I had built for myself. Then came the night that pushed me to my breaking point. I arrived home to find the door locked. I knocked softly, expecting Brian to let me in. Instead, Carol's voice came from the other side. Firm and unyielding. You're not coming in unless you agree to sign the house over to Brian, she said. My heart sank. Carol. Please. Let me in. This is my home. Not anymore, she snapped. This is my son's house now. Either you sign it over, or I'll call the police and report you for trespassing. Her words were like a slap in the face. I had worked so hard to build this life, only to be shut out of it. Tears streamed down my face as I sat on the porch, the cold night air biting through my coat. I felt completely betrayed and abandoned. But in that moment of despair, something inside me shifted. I realized I couldn't let them win. I wouldn't let them strip me of everything I had worked so hard to achieve. As I sat there, a fire began to burn within me. I decided to leave. But not in defeat. I would fight back. This wasn't just about the house, it was about reclaiming my dignity, my independence, and my future. The next morning, I packed a bag and left for my parents' home. They welcomed me with open arms, their unconditional love wrapping around me like a warm blanket. My father, a retired police officer, and my mother, a nurturing homemaker, reminded me of the strength I had forgotten I possessed. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. This was just the beginning. I was ready to stand up for myself, to fight for the life I deserved and for the child I was about to bring into the world. At my parents' home, I finally found a sense of safety I hadn't felt in months. The warmth of their hugs, their quiet reassurances, and the familiar scent of home wrapped around me like a protective cocoon. My father's steady presence, honed from years as a police officer, and my mother's nurturing care reminded me of the strength I had always drawn from my family. But even as I rested, a sense of purpose began to take root. I couldn't stay in this safe haven forever. I needed to fight back for myself and my unborn child. As the days passed, I started to piece together a plan. I reached out to Jessica, a close friend from college who had become a successful attorney. She had always been a fierce advocate for justice, and I trusted her completely. When I told her everything about the eviction, Carol's manipulation, and Brian's betrayal, Jessica listened with an intensity that made me feel truly seen for the first time in weeks. This is unacceptable, Emily, she said, her voice firm. You have every right to fight back. We'll build a strong case. But we need evidence, texts, emails, voicemails, anything that shows their behavior. Her confidence was contagious, and I nodded, feeling a spark of determination. Jessica's guidance gave me direction. I began documenting everything, combing through old messages and voicemails, and even starting a journal where I detailed every instance of mistreatment. The process was emotionally draining. Reliving those moments of hurt and betrayal felt like reopening wounds. But it also reminded me why I had to fight. One memory stood out vividly, the day I discovered Carol rifling through my personal files. I had come home from work, excited to share news about my pregnancy with Brian, only to find Carol sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by my financial documents. Shocked, I asked her what she was doing. Just checking your finances, she said nonchalantly. You're going to be a mother, so it's important to be prepared. Her complete disregard for my privacy had left me shaking with anger. That's not your place, Carol. You have no right to go through my things, I had said, my voice trembling. She had merely shrugged, her face cold and unbothered. Your husband's finances are my concern too, Emily. If he struggles, we all struggle. We wouldn't want that, would we? Even now, remembering that moment made my blood boil. It wasn't just the invasion of privacy, It was the way she dismissed my boundaries as though they didn't matter. That moment became a cornerstone of my case, a clear example of how deeply she had overstepped. Jessica and I worked tirelessly to gather evidence, preparing for what we both knew would be a challenging legal battle. I recorded everything: the night Carol locked me out, the threats she made, even the subtle jabs she delivered about my worth as a wife and mother. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall I was building to protect myself and my child. Throughout it all, my parents were my anchor. My mother would bring me tea late at night as I wrote in my journal, her quiet presence a reminder that I wasn't alone. My father, with his practical wisdom, reminded me to focus on what mattered. "Emily," he said one evening, "this fight isn't just about a house. It's about showing them that they can't take away your freedom. Stand tall. And don't let them push you around." Their unwavering support gave me the courage I needed to keep going. But even as I prepared, doubts crept in. What if Brian fought back? What if Carol managed to twist the narrative? Jessica, ever the steady voice of reason, reassured me. "Let them try," she said. "You have the truth on your side. The evidence speaks louder than their words." As the weeks turned into months, my determination solidified. I wasn't just fighting for a house, I was fighting for the life I had built and the future I wanted for my child. Carol and Brian had underestimated me, but they were about to see the strength I had found in my pain. The day I filed for divorce was bittersweet. As I signed the papers, I felt a mix of fear and empowerment. It was the first tangible step toward reclaiming my independence. Walking out of Jessica's office that day, I felt a flicker of hope. I had spent too long being silent, too long letting others dictate my life. Now, I was ready to take back control, one step at a time. The day of the hearing arrived, and I woke with my heart pounding in my chest. The months of preparation, the sleepless nights, and the emotional turmoil had all led to this moment. As I dressed, I felt the weight of my decisions pressing on me. I was stepping into battle, not just for my home but for my freedom and the future of my child. My parents drove me to the courthouse, their presence a quiet but powerful reassurance. My mother squeezed my hand as we arrived. "You're brave, Emily. You've got this," she said, her voice filled with conviction. My father's nod of approval was equally comforting, his unspoken support like a shield against the uncertainty ahead. Jessica met me at the courthouse steps, her expression calm and confident. She carried herself with a determination that bolstered my courage. "This is your day, Emily. Remember, you're not just defending yourself, you're standing up for your rights," she said, her hand resting reassuringly on my arm. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. I spotted Brian and Carol seated at the front, their expressions as cold and unyielding as ever. Brian's jaw was clenched, his eyes avoiding mine, while Carol's sharp gaze locked on me with a mixture of disdain and defiance. I swallowed hard and took my seat beside Jessica, willing myself to stay composed. The hearing began with Jessica presenting our case. She laid out the timeline of events, detailing the emotional abuse and manipulation I had endured. Her voice was steady and clear as she described how Carol had locked me out of my own home, demanded the transfer of ownership, and systematically undermined my autonomy. She emphasized the toll it had taken on my mental health, especially during my pregnancy. As Jessica spoke, I glanced at the judge, a middle-aged woman with a commanding presence. Her expression was unreadable, but I could see her taking notes and listening intently. When Jessica presented the evidence we had gathered, text messages, voicemails, and my journal entries, a flicker of empathy seemed to cross the judge's face. Then it was my turn to speak. I took a deep breath and rose from my seat, my legs feeling like they might give out beneath me. "Your Honor," I began, my voice trembling slightly, "this case isn't just about a house. It's about reclaiming my life. I've endured months of emotional abuse and manipulation, and I'm here today to stand up for myself and my child. I recounted the night Carol locked me out, the hurtful remarks she made, and the suffocating presence she imposed in my home. As I spoke, I could feel the room shift. My voice grew steadier with each word, the fear giving way to a quiet strength. I loved my husband, I continued, glancing briefly at Brian. I wanted to build a life with him, a family. But he chose to side with his mother, turning my home into a place of fear and isolation. All I want is to provide a safe, loving environment for my child, one where I am free to live without being controlled or belittled. When I finished, the courtroom fell silent. I glanced at the judge, who was studying me with a thoughtful expression. Then I looked at Brian. His face was pale, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Carol, however, remained stoic, her lips pressed into a thin line. Brian's lawyer tried to downplay their actions, arguing that Carol's involvement was out of concern for her son and the unborn child. But Jessica countered with precision, highlighting the clear pattern of control and coercion in their behavior. The evidence spoke louder than their arguments, and with each point Jessica made, I felt the balance of power begin to shift. By the end of the hearing, I was emotionally drained but resolute. I had laid everything bare, shared my pain, and fought for my truth. As the judge announced that she would deliberate and reconvene the following week, I felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. Walking out of the courthouse, Jessica turned to me with a small smile. "You did incredible today, Emily. No matter what happens, you stood up for yourself. That's a victory in itself." Her words resonated deeply. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope, not just for the outcome of the case, but for the strength I had rediscovered within myself. This was far from over, but I was ready to face whatever came next. In the end, justice prevailed. The court ruled in my favor, granting me sole ownership of my home and full custody of my child. It was a bittersweet victory, proof that I had reclaimed my independence and dignity, but also a reminder of the betrayal I had endured. Returning to my home felt like stepping into a new chapter. I redecorated, painted the walls, and began preparing for my baby's arrival. Every change symbolized a fresh start, a life built on my own terms. This journey taught me profound lessons about resilience, self-worth, and the importance of standing up for oneself. It wasn't just about winning a legal battle, it was about rebuilding my life with strength and love. Thank you for watching my story. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to Life Stories for more inspiring tales of courage and transformation.